Good.
I'm good.
Idris Franklin, welcome to the show. How are we doing, sir?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Talk to me about biokinetics.
Biokinetics, the improvement of sort of health-related bases in the sense of improving the quality of life through administrating physical activity to better some behavioural cycles that we have in this world, and some ways of living, really. So tailoring in and zoning into where that can be needed.
So you work through the D-Pulse Plus assessment is the protocol that you use for biokinetics.
It's something that I have experience with, yes, and upon doing some work in the past, it's something that greatly amplified my general knowledge and my basis as to how to use that in general, incorporated with how to tailor that individually for the client to make sure that we're giving them exactly the best of what they need for their individual circumstances.
Good stuff. So I shall put on screen for the people at home a picture of the assessment and how it's laid out. But just for listeners, talk to me about the key elements that go into the D-Pulse Plus assessment, and more, particularly we were speaking about the alignment of the chakras. I'd be interested to go into that with you.
So the D-Pulse assessment in itself is a very straightforward but complex piece of equipment which reads electrical signals that we essentially don't have the acuity to read,
right,
or collect data on per se with our own brain. In doing so, our nervous system and the ways that our nervous system will react voluntarily and involuntarily will be readed and recorded.
Okay.
So much so that it gives a clear and thorough database as to how everything behind the scenes is working, from a cellular level, really, from a voltage level.
So there are things that would flash up that you could be not at all aware of. You could, for instance, I remember you and I going through one of these assessments and seeing that someone who was actually, on the basis of things from the eye view, very healthy and in shape, but actually there were a number of underlying things that were not as they should be. So this can bring forth some critical elements of your health, as to enable you to actually look at your health in general, and things that may, for instance, be out of line and could later on in life become a serious issue if they're not to be addressed. This system highlights those and makes you aware of your health at an age where you're able to do something about it and implement the appropriate steps. So on that point, what are the appropriate steps to look through here? Because from my perspective on this, there's a similar realm when it comes to physiotherapy, if I'm not mistaken.
With relation to biokinetics,
yes,
there is a small difference in definitive value. And
okay.
The boundaries can be confused, of course, in terms of a physiotherapist having more of a therapeutic quality at reducing pain,
right,
and reducing an injury and how that affects the body, whereas a biokineticist has more of an impact as to how to correct certain cycles of behaviour and certain ways of being, which not only have a psychological impact but could also be driven by psychological impacts or factors that the person might not be aware of.
So,
just like you said.
So what ways of being would we be talking about here? Would we be talking about, for instance, high sugar diet, say?
That's definitely something that can have a dangerous impact on such a thing. Not only how the physical body responds, not only how the immune system is, if anything, temporarily paralysed by the processed sugar coming in. It does have an effect at distorting how the chakras in themselves can have an influence in their ability to keep the body out of a state of dis-ease or disorder.
And for those at home, because this was a topic that I had no idea what the chakras were until you and I spoke about it. What are the chakras? Talk me through the top to bottom elements of the chakras.
From a base point of view, I like to think of them as ever rotating circles of energy that are susceptible to taking in energy and are also susceptible to giving out energy. Depending on how enlightened you are in this world, they could be perceived as anything like a plug hole, water going down a plug hole. They could be perceived as a black hole in space, light going through the black hole. The point being is that usually we don't have a conscious view as to where what's going through said hole is going.
Yes.
We have an idea, but we don't have a full conscious ability to decipher that. I guess the idea with these chakras are they're a force in motion, and in doing so allow us to have full corroboration with the forces around us and how they have influence on our inner self, and how our inner self therefore has a forceful reaction to our surroundings in sense. The ability for said chakras to be open, or how much they are open, are based on so many factors. Such as you say earlier, there's a person that I know of not long ago who on the outside, if you like, from an eyes point of view, seem to be doing very well, seem to be holding themselves very well. And in finding out a little bit more about themselves, they were aware that there are some certain things about them that they weren't consciously aware of. This could be an element of giving and receiving too much with a certain factor. It doesn't have to be literally giving something and receiving something. It could just be that general disruption in ratio as to how much the organ itself and how much the organ flow is giving out as opposed to receiving in turn, which in itself, after a while, will create a state of disease or disorder and therefore have a general impact on how they will operate in general. From a bottom to top point of view, I'd say the bottom three, as opposed to getting to the middle, which is usually the heart chakra, we call it. We take the H away from the letter heart, the word heart, and we put it at the end, and it spells earth. So anything beneath those three are essentially things that keep us grounded to earth, but in a primitively fearful way.
Like a sexual desire.
A sexual desire, a lust, a greed, a hunger, an addictive cycle, something that's almost like a parasite from within us that is driving us to be operating in a certain way of autonomy, which can be quite hard to counteract. And if we're conscious of it, then it can be hard every day. But if we're not, then it can take great influence in how we operate. Those three in particular are related to those particular influences, where in the body they have their impact and how they have an impact on the organs themselves. We're talking sexual health, reproductive organs, intestinal organs. We're talking the great liver, pancreas, gallbladder. The organs that in general are particularly responsible for aiding the main organs in their function. So if you have had those organs and those side organs, if you like, infiltrated already by these negative influences, then you can already imagine how underneath the surface they're having an invisible effect at putting you in a state of dis-ease and disorder. Not only that, what we eat, what we consume can also have a great impact on the liver, its ability to detoxify the body, kidney to filter the blood, the stomach to cleanse an ecosystem, and also passing everything through. The colours at which these brands are usually associated with as well that aren't good for you are mainly of these lighter colours, red, oranges, yellows, the McDonald's logos that we see nowadays, the things like that, they're heavily associated with those colours, so they will have a profound effect. Going up from the heart chakra, we're now talking more about awareness within and your ability to actually have conscious control and ability to be itself, oneself, so that the invariable factors on the outside therefore don't have so much of a strong impact on who you are. And in doing so, you become spiritually enlightened with yourself. You have more of a control, less of an appeal for things in life that are materialistic. You're just happy with what you need as opposed to what you want. So turning what you want into a need, in a sense, without the greed of society taking its influence on you and allowing you to become one of them.
And I think there's a great deal of programming that goes on with this that is there's a sort of ambient feeling that we can have particularly when you're someone who's conscious of your own health and who is making an effort to improve. We can sometimes fall into this sort of ambient feeling of something's wrong, but we don't quite know where it is. There's I actually find myself to an extent in this position now where there's something somewhere that's just not quite the way it should be. Now, if I actually sit with you and make a conscious effort to look at what it is that is quite possibly not in the position it should be in, it would be something to do with diet. My dietary preference at the moment and the things that I am more inclined to ingest are certainly not of the quality that would be a conducive to good health. And a point that I'd be interested to go into you with on this is it's very easy to find yourself falling into poor dietary preferences. The essence of the issue with the food industry now is that the worst food just so happens to be the easiest food. The simplest foods for us to eat are invariably the worst things for us to eat. Now, though, at some point you have to hold yourself accountable and just say, look, if you want to eat well, you need to start eating well. But there's a cycle to be broken of that ease of just picking something up that you shouldn't eat rather than actually taking the time to make a healthy meal or to spend a little bit extra money or a little bit extra time to actually put your health first in that. Talk to me about how important it is that we actually put the quality of our food and that fuel as a forefront and as something that is not to be swept away. It's all too easy, I should just round that out there, to for instance, focus on doing your work and not provide yourself enough time to actually make a good meal. Talk to me about what could go wrong if that is the cycle that you continue to find yourself in.
Well, food, dieting, the term, ingesting, it's something that's second nature to us. But I think it's something that, in however long of a time recently, could be tens, decades, centuries, millennia, our perception of how we view food and the availability of food groups has greatly enhanced and become more available, so much so that we're having the choice of what we eat, as opposed to being primitively forced to being able to eat what we could.
Yeah.
We're creating a desensitized relationship with such a profound primitive part of ourself.
Yeah.
And in doing so is kind of unwiring who we are as a human, as a homo sapien, if you like. Almost to the degree that I think that one way where we called a different Latin name as a species, instead of that free wandering person that provided for himself. And in doing so, we had our own conscious ability, our own inverse relationship with our chakras, our own ability to ask questions within and to get a straightforward answer from our conscience. What you feel with I feel like everything's in the right manner and in the right direction, but there's just something not there. That could be just one or two or three of them, or even 4 or 5, just being a little bit closer to where they need to be going to be 100% open and in receipt of what you are. It isn't easy with the cycles and the routines that we have, no. Especially with megacorp businesses and conglomerates taking full advantage of our inability to have that free time.
And they prey on that,
of course,
that desire.
Of course, just like predators prey on prey in the wild, just like we used to with our primitive side. They've almost taken that responsibility from us. And in providing it for us, they're also having the audacity to hold us accountable for the decisions that we make when they're dominating the food market deliberately and making it extremely hard for us to grow our own food and almost illegal to produce your own crops unless you're using certain growing pesticides which will damage your crops, right? Yeah. It's okay if you're using our stuff, but it's not if you're using your stuff. It creates a massive problem and a rift, because unless you're learning well from your parents and you're learning to cook and you're learning to cut and provide food for yourself and the element of how it all goes together, it's going to be hard off the bat. And as you say,
right.
Life isn't as easy as sometimes people make out of it. We do not have that free time available sometimes unless we specifically make it our sole focus to put ourselves in that position to do so. This short-term convenience way of living doesn't just stem for eating, it stems into many different aspects of our life, and before we know it, it's leaching out into ways of our living. How we hold our company with friends. We're no longer talking in face, we're talking over phone, because that diminishes the value, because it's just enough, it's just what we need, like these food groups, the empty calories, the empty conversations. So this can all have a profound effect on not only how your body reacts to what you're eating, but then how you think and how you hold yourself. Because without knowing it, you've got imaginary shackles on yourself, sticking you and gripping you to these particular ways of being. Food in general, very important. Knowledge of food, extremely important. Clean eating just as clean as people were hundreds and thousands of years ago. Lots of healthy oils, lots of clean vegetables, clean sources of protein, instead of this processed, ultra-processed area, which of course is now causing a massive problem with the body and has done for at least 100 years. So to round off with that as well, in regards to how that affects the chakras, it just keeps them from being open. It just stops them from being that. It's almost like you're being driven from within by these reactions to the invisible reactions in your body. They're not natural, so your body's not going to know how to react when they're involved into your ecosystem, if you like.
And you touched on a fantastic point there. That's something I hadn't thought about. Of this, there is this sort of subliminal programming that goes on when it comes to that ease. As you say, I noticed this in myself, that for instance, if I was to spend too much time on my phone, or if I was to spend too much time on my phone somewhere I shouldn't be, more specifically, I noticed that bleeds out into my general way of being. I noticed that the one thing that is particularly out of line when it comes to this is my patience. I noticed that I, for instance, might spend too much time in a certain depraved field of the internet, and because of that, I will be less patient when it comes to someone making a mistake. I'll be less patient with myself. I'll be less patient with results, for instance. Even when I'm doing the right things, I'm thinking I want this now. I'm not prepared to wait so long. So though I will carry on doing it, I'll be perpetually irritated because I'm not patient. I can endure rather than be patient. And it's the same, as I say, with food. If I notice that I'm more inclined to reach for this simpler thing, I shall make a sandwich rather than making a whole meal. Or even worse, I shall reach for chocolate or confectionery, the things that are really the
With the
pull that away from you, the good things out of you.
with the sandwich side of things, it'd be like going and buying a processed meal deal sandwich, right? Instead of making it fresh at home.
Exactly.
Instead of having an organic conversation with somebody, you're having a processed conversation with somebody.
That's right.
In the form of a text. Now, the phone, it can be extremely distracting. Of course it can. It has great influence on all our lives. It has great influence on our physiology and our psychology when we're in the moment, or at least thinking we're in the moment. Not when the LED's flashing 100,000 times a minute or whatever, right? So without knowing so, our body is being blasted by these very short wavelengths, which are essentially trapping us in this hypnotic state.
Yeah, very much so.
If they were to happen 1,000 times a minute, then we'd have a little bit more sway in between being in that optical elusive state and being able to actually be focusing our attention on something else going on. But instead, we then feel as a result, if we're occupying ourselves on our phone, any habitual habit, such as going to the toilet, such as prepping a meal, such as having a basic conversation with somebody, such as waiting, whatever it be, it's all greatly affected and impacted because your sole focus is what's on that screen.
Yes.
In a hypnotic state. But what all that flashing is doing is stopping the inner part of yourself that is reading all of this data, is stopping it from being able to do its job.
There's something that feels suppressed.
It's something that feels suppressed, and it almost feels like people react almost like you would if you were a younger version of yourself. That impatient nature of, oh, but I want this now, and I want to look at this now, though, so, can you hold on a second, or can you not figure it out for yourself? And it's only until we're taking away from that and we flex our ocular muscles in a different way, and we actually look around and we have a moment to think about, oh, hang on, I've looked at that whilst being on my phone, but I've not taken any data in. But now that I'm looking at it myself, I can actually feel something from it. Yeah. It leaches out, and before you know it, people are in a life of complete autonomy, just doom scrolling is the term, is it not?
That's right.
Because they've also decreased the sensitivity of the dopamine. Yes. They've decreased their availability of it and their ability to use that for a positive gain. So chemically now we're being influenced by these food groups in a sense. It's changing the inner balance of chemistry in our body, which in itself is making it even harder for us to know and think, are we doing all right? Are we feeling exactly how we should on a daily basis? So no wonder you'd feel at times that, oh, I feel like it's all right and it should be, but just something else. Yeah. Could probably be that little bit of that in your body that's still having a bit of an impact on you without you knowing so, unless of course you do.
I think I know so, but I'm not sure the subconscious version of myself knows so.
That's the wonder. That's the wonder, yet the marvel of the conscious and the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind does a lot of work without us knowing so, in good ways, but
it takes
without us knowing so.
Thousands of micro expressions to be able to gauge the opinion of someone.
And all that data point, it's as acute as AI, as AI, a camera picking up data points. If you squeeze an orange, let's say, all of that zest coming out into the air, we wouldn't be able to track every molecule of zest coming out. We wouldn't be able to smell everything. Yeah. But we pick up on data points.
There's a general sense that we can take in with that.
Of course. And in doing so, that then, as we'll discuss probably at a later point, how that in itself is taking away the need and the reasoning for people to do things themselves nowadays.
That's right.
Because they're reliant, because they're dependent, because they're, oh, well, I don't have the means to do it, and I don't have the time to do it, and I'm convincing myself of it, so I'm already... They don't have the people that they then feel badly or negatively towards aren't really doing the work. It's their own self, it's trapping themselves in their own cycle, but without knowing that it's something else on the outside that's doing it. It's all as a result of that subconscious autonomy, relaying in yourself, oh, I'm the one. It's not. It's actually being made a little bit more difficult to begin with.
Now, there's 2 points there that I would be interested to go with you. First of all, we touched on the cooking we've sort of just gone on the shores of here. And another thing I'd be interested to go into with is martial arts. Now, what I'd like to do with these is, I think the most important or one of the best ways of really recapturing that feeling of control, being able to do things on your own behalf, really actually having that own presence within yourself of going, I can take care of myself. I don't need someone else to provide for me. I don't need to take a simpler route. I am capable of doing this. I think 2 things that are fantastic for really creating that feeling within yourself of competency is the ability to cook and martial arts. Now, it's obvious when you look at it at face value that this essentially is saying I can feed myself and I can fight for myself. Or, in a more primitive sense, I can feed my family and I can fight for my family. Talk to me about the importance. First of all, let's talk about the importance of actually being able, and I think it's an understated value of being able to cook for yourself. And then let's go into the value of martial arts.
Being able to cook for yourself is a skill that is heavily underrated. It's something that would be second nature, passing down from father and mother, son to daughter. It would be your way of continuing your existence. It would be your way of passing on knowledge. It's something that we're proud of, something that we used to have the time to do. Nowadays, it's not so available of the way that things are, money, jobs, etc. Being able to prepare a meal speaks volumes about you. Of course it does. Fending for yourself, cooking for yourself, and as you said, fighting for yourself. You said cooking first and then fighting. And again, the inverse way of looking at that is another emphasis and example as to how our way of looking at food has been completely inversed. First, we'd have to fight for our family, because the animal we'd be fighting against
Yes, that's a good point.
would be something that's pretty damn dangerous.
Saber-toothed tiger somewhere.
And then we're feeding our family. Whereas now, instead of feeding the family and then fighting for our family, what's happening now is that people are fighting against the inner chemistry and the physiology of how these families are being fed. But they're not noticing it. But somebody who's a provider might notice it, right? Somebody who, and I'm not saying that all men are just providers, because there's plenty of women out there that, provide a lot. But if your main way of operating has been to provide for a family and to fight and feed for a family, then it's going to be hard for that man or that individual to keep himself at an even bias and even setting, albeit trying to keep his family in a position where they can be provided for and also not be influenced by the megacorp and all of the conglomerate ways of being and doing things, crammed ways of being.
Told the way that you need to be.
Told the way that you need to be. Now, unless that was through our own agenda and our own narrative, look at how that's got us in civilization, being told what to do. It creates an order of hierarchy, which is all good and well. But then it comes to a point where everybody wants to fish the same lake. There's no fish left.
That's right.
And then what? We have to bring in different people from different areas of the world.
We have to bring in...
We have to bring in people from different areas of the world to then refill this lake, but then get rid of some of the old people that aren't appreciative of the ways that this lake need to be. It's happening a lot in this country. A lot of people are emigrating to this country in the notion of they have that primitive value more inclined and more associated with them. They're worth more to that societal value. They have more experience in passing on their cooking values and their looking after family values as opposed to we do. We do mean the main average person in this country that has more than less control of what actually they're ingesting, as opposed to making it their focal point, We went and got food, that was our day. Yeah. We went and got food, we provided it, boom, that's our day. The rest of the family can do the work, they can skin the animal, they can cut it up, do whatever, right? Yeah. It's not like that now. So the martial arts, in my opinion, is going to be a massive impact. It's going to have a massive impact, it's going to be a massive positive influence, and it's going to allow these people to have somewhere to go to better themselves and to also sharpen their inner iron as to how they... And also better dealing with these factors. Better dealing. If you can provide better for yourself, then you're going to be able to provide better for a family or for people that are part of your life. Cooking, the whole process of cooking, the whole process of prepping food, all the recipe ingredients, all the different moves you can have in Muay Thai, in a martial art, whatever it be. You know, some oils, some spatulas, some cooking ingredients, whatever it be.
Some roundhouse kicks.
Some knuckles, some wrists, some elbows. You have a formulation of ingredients and you put them together to create a recipe.
Yeah.
A formulation of ingredients and you put them together to create a recipe.
It's a recipe of competency.
Of competency, of flavour, of passion as well, and that symbiotic relationship that we have to just keep pushing through.
Yeah.
And to find our source of food, to find our next source of food, to find our next source of comfort in martial art, to find our next session so that we can leave a better person than we were when we entered it, so that we can be.
There's a subliminal message that is sent beautifully for both of these things. Now, as I say, I think actually cooking is a strange one when it comes to the self-improvement industry. Of we're so consistently push this idea of to become self-improvement will speak of the value of the cold shower. It will speak of the value of reading the book. It will speak of the value of working towards a goal, but it will not touch on things like the fact that being able to actually provide for yourself on this basis generates a real strong feeling within yourself. You feel as though you are capable. Now, on the topic of martial arts, you were the reason that I got into martial arts. It was you that brought me into the gym, and I can say that after it's been about 8 months now, consistency. I started last January, had a bit of an injury, came back in the sort of middle of about 8 months. The difference in my competency in myself, even though my skill is not to your caliber, is astronomical. The person who went into the gym and was totally full of fear is not the one that sits before you now. Of at least there's a level of competency that I'm afforded now to know that, okay, I don't want to get into a brawl for the fun of it, but I know that there's something there. There's something underpinning my general existence that just makes me feel a little bit more secure in myself. Now, the perennial issue when it comes to martial arts, as we touched on there, is the fear. There's a real fear for a lot of people of actually getting into the gym. Now, this makes total sense on the basis of, I think martial arts, particularly for men, confront the one thing that most of us do not want to confront, and that is our masculinity, our ego. There are things, I mean, it calls back to that primitive sense of, if I go into that gym and I'm immediately beaten up, or beaten up is the wrong phrase there. If I am made aware of the fact that my skills are not as strong as the people around me, it makes you feel vulnerable. Now, in a primitive sense, vulnerable means death. There's a intrinsically built concern there that if I'm vulnerable, I will be attacked. Now, of course, this is not the world we live in nowadays. This is a programming that is from our predecessors. In actual fact, most people, even without martial arts training, will go their entire lives without having any conflict that requires that training. But there's an absolute value on a day-to-day sense of being someone who knows that they have those skills in their repertoire. Talk to me about how you felt when you first got into the gym. What was the experience for you in terms of fear or apprehension of going in and challenging that? And how can you get around that feeling of fear that is so common when people want to start martial arts?
It's a strong feeling. It really is, Tom. I was more than capable of being able to hold myself before getting into martial arts, but nowhere near as much as I know I can after getting into martial arts. That's physically and psychologically. How we view it, I used to use it, I thought, to, quieten some people in primary school, the people that picked on me for my name or for whatever. I used to think it was a way for my parents to just, get me into something where my energy would go to good use. I used to think that there was a negative reason for it. I used to think it was, you go and do that and da-da-dun. But what I didn't really realise, I guess, the whole time growing up doing judo, gymnastics, a lot of other sports as well when I moved to Spain, and how that then ultimately combines to more experience in other sports and martial arts is that it wasn't until I truly got into martial arts and Muay Thai that I felt that complete and utter inner change of discipline and want and provision for myself. That could be getting up and cooking the right breakfast or cooking the right meal later that day after my training session because I know that my body needed it. And I'm providing for myself in doing so. The responsibility, the discipline turns on and it's heightened. What feels strange is that sudden, profound awareness that you have that ability to release and unleash your potential.
Yeah.
It's something that stops a lot of people from progressing forward. And what helps that, doesn't help it, so to speak, is procrastination.
That's right.
People will use that to their advantage. And it doesn't also help when you can perfectly go on a phone and doom scroll. That's procrastination galore. And then before you know it, you've completely made it the way that your subconscious wants it to be, which is to be that relinquent self.
Yeah, fueling that fear as well.
And it's until you then go, oh, actually, I thought I was meant to be doing that today, or doing that in a or what am I doing? Where's this time gone? You've fallen in trap with your own trap.
Yeah.
And in a sense with the martial arts, people falling in trap with their own trap in thinking that they don't have that kind of, what is it about themselves? Do they not believe in their ability? Have they not been in a situation where they've had that confrontation and therefore as a result haven't got any background experience of how to deal with a situation when they might get hit,
or they don't know the feeling,
or they don't know the feeling in general. Of course. If I was a bird, I wouldn't be negative toward a fish for not being able to climb a tree or fly. Like, a fish swims, a bird flies. Like, until you've done something, or until you're wired, or for a certain way of doing, then you're not going to know. They're abstract examples, of course, but there's development that comes into play. Birds grow bigger wings. They grow bigger wingspans. They cover bigger journeys. Some build bigger nests. Some fish can go on land. The
quality of life improves.
The quality of life improves. Now that also links back to the quality of life point that you made first off in this, with how the quantity of things in life can supersede how we ultimately have quality in our life. Quantity being doing too much on a day, or feeling that we're doing too much in a day. It might feel that way because the time isn't ours to use freely. So we've got to rush everything in. Oh, I've got to go work tomorrow, so if I don't do this today, then I won't be able to do that tomorrow. And if that has a knock-on effect, then you're already on a downhill, right?
Yeah.
It's already making it harder. Instead of having that conscious ability that you've said since January and after having that injury, your own perception of bouncing back from such a thing as well. You may have injured yourself in the past. You feel differently about responding to that. You feel stronger in response. You feel more inclined to be able to go, yeah, I can actually get back from this more positively and quicker, and I've got a tangible reason why to, because of your constant improvement coming in the gym and how it makes you feel as a person. Before, you might not have had something so invigorating and so replenishing to kind of have as a, I'm going to get back into that because of that.
Yeah.
Instead of it just being I'm going to get better so that I can be healthy again, so that my knee can be better, so that something can be better. That's your goal then, isn't it?
Yes.
Just to get better.
I've never found, to be honest, anything that has been so immediately rewarding as martial arts is. I noticed that, the reason as to why I came to you and sort of, and we had the discussion about, the fact that you were a trainer at Savage, at which point I decided to come along, was because I had this sort of fear residing within me that I had for years of the fact that I was an arrogant person with no reason to back that up. And I had this fear, this sort of actual image quality fear of one day me being put on my arse and thinking, you don't know what you're talking about. There was this real fear within myself that at some point that arrogance that was rubbing people up the wrong way was going to get me put in a position that would have destroyed my confidence and put me in and potentially in a physically dangerous scenario. I think the most valuable lesson I've ever taken from my stint as in the martial arts world is it teaches you the fact that the ego and you as yourself, the perception you have of yourself, is not necessarily who it is that you actually are. I think we can believe our own hype. And I feel one of the best, if not, to be honest, I would advocate this as the best way to deflate that ego so that you're actually competent. As I say, you will understand the difference between an ego that is backed by ability and an ego that is fueled by arrogance. Martial arts teaches you in the most obvious of ways that you are not necessarily as grand as you think you are, and that's not a bad thing. You know, I was at jiu-jitsu yesterday, and the feeling, that suffocating feeling of knowing that someone's better than you and that you need to improve here. There's something that needs to be done here for you to achieve the goal of yourself that you really think. You know, for instance, when I was not in the martial arts world, before I'd gone to my first session, I had a genuine feeling that if I got in a fight, I would just work it out. Now, a lot of people do. It's like the classic, oh, I'll just see red and I'll be okay. Now, you know that's not the case. That if you don't know what you're doing the minute someone punches you, Mike Tyson's got a fantastic quote on this, that everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. The value of really bringing that ego to where it should be, bringing your competency to where it should be, is the thing that I will, until the day I die, I shall die on this hill, will say that there's a real value in going into martial arts, going into a fight gym and going and doing that. How do you feel you can get over the hill, though, the perennial issue of that fear that there can be of getting into the gym?
Getting back in touch with your primitive self is probably, or was probably, the hardest thing that then became the ultimate driving beneath it all. So emotions in a sphere, clear sphere, see-through, water. If we hit that sphere from the outside, it's going to ripple from the inside. Now, analogically, that's stress factors from the outside affecting your inner ability to keep yourself still and calm. So before Muay Thai, I'd have a adrenaline-based response, shall we say, that would also be driven slightly out of anger. I would draw for painful moments in life, and I'd use that as temporary fuel, and I'd have good experience in using that. Overwhelming, shall we say. I'd overwhelm the person to the degree that my sudden surge of emotional power and relationship between that and my physiology would help me get through it, as you say. I'll be okay, as you said, with walking in a fight. And, you know, primitively, though, we could never walk into a situation or run away or run into one half guessing.
That's right.
We needed to know for certain and believe for certain. Whether that was before we had ability to enlighten our brain, which we'll touch on in a different manner, but that mundane 1-0 way of looking, that's a threat. I need to take that threat out. If I don't take that threat out, it's taking me out.
Yeah.
Bang.
Me or them.
You dealt with it. It's not the case nowadays with that. It's not as easy as it seems for people. We grow up and we're told it's not good to hurt people and to punch each other in the face or whatever it be. And unless we do so, we don't know how it feels.
Yeah, that's right.
And of course, not doing so and coming into an environment where it's totally okay to is going to be just as confusing.
It is confusing.
But how you're taught to do it and how the person in turn acts around you is a reflection of that. It's also a reflection of their own ability to take stuff in life and it not affect their inner water, not affect their inner self. You are the controlling factor of your outcomes, situations, and martial arts and Muay Thai, that is profound and that is made clear.
Yes.
It links in with the perception of your own discipline. It links in with the provision. It links in with providing for yourself. And touching on what was the last point of that question in regards to
Getting over that fear.
Getting over that fear factor. Exposure.
Yes.
Exposure. It's not until you expose yourself to certain situations. It's a compound effect, push and pull. Action has consequence. You expose yourself to something, you're also stepping out of a comfort zone. So there's a double entendre to it. There's a double benefit to it. Not only are you subconsciously, you're also consciously stepping out the comfort zone.
And I think as well that the point to kind of encapsulate that is the only way that you can get over the fear of doing it is by doing it.
And the factors be right in their nature, and in doing so, the intricacy is very important as to how an individual can develop.
I think it's important for people to actually know what it is that they're expecting as well.
And that,
when I first went into the gym, I had, and I know that this is a unanimously thought feeling for people that haven't gone into the gym, is that it would be this fucking bunch of knuckleheads that will tear you to pieces when you get in there. Now, I am absolutely adamant and firm in my feeling that one of the most... because I don't go to the gym as much as most people there. I don't know a lot of people there, but it's one of the only places in the world where I feel almost immediately comfortable. And on that point, it's a place where I shouldn't, in my own nature, feel comfortable. I'm being challenged. I'm being beat. I'm literally fighting in there. You know, it's not actually an innately comfortable place. But the feeling that you get from the people that are in there, there is that real tribe mentality. There is that feeling of iron sharpens iron. We're here to help each other. We're not here to hurt each other. That's not... I mean, Savage is fantastic for this, I must add. That there's no one in there that is out to hurt. The people that are in there want to help you. And I've frequently found myself sparring with someone that is much better than I am. And they will stop and take that time to... you know, say, oh, make sure that your hands are in the appropriate position, or when you step this way, so and so. You know, actually take the time out of their progress to help you progress. I think the thing that was made immediately aware to me on the first time I went to the gym was that no one in there is going to take the piss. The people that are in there are glad that you are in there. They're either indifferent because they're just doing their own thing, or they're happy to see someone else come into the gym and welcoming. You know Ed Collins. Yeah. He's a good bloke. The first conversation that he and I had, I was speaking to him after sparring that I just felt a bit... We'd done hard sparring on that day, and I just sort of felt a bit out of my depth because it was like it was the first time I'd done hard sparring, and it was just a bit overwhelming, as you could imagine, as you would know. And after the fact, he and I had a conversation for about an hour, and we walked down to the train station, bought me a coffee, and there was a real solidarity there. I thought, this is a person that I don't actually know. You know, this is the first conversation we've had, and he's been kind enough to take the time out of his fight camp to talk to me, to buy me a drink, and just make me feel more comfortable in myself. I think it's absolutely critical for people at home to just know that what you expect a fight gym to be like if you've never been is not what they're like. It's actually, ironically, I believe, who's the chap with the, I think he's got a spider on his neck there. He's bald. Very tough looking bloke.
New member, probably.
Is it Bert?
It'd be someone that I've not probably met myself.
Oh, okay. He's a great, good chap, really nice person. And he speaks of an example of the fact that some of the people that I've met in this gym have been the most polite people I've ever met. Really, genuinely kind people. And that's something that I don't feel is... I don't feel that people actually realise that is the way that a fight gym will be. I think people are consumed with this fear that there's going to be something to be scared of when you're in this gym. When in actual fact...
That in itself, just that, consumed by fear to be... What was it? That version of themselves. They're consumed by their own fear.
Yeah.
To become that version of themselves.
Yeah.
In society. With the earlier talking of food and how it inflects your chakras. We're being driven and made to think that being in touch with our primitive side is dangerous.
Yes, that's a good point.
It's dangerous.
We're told to shy away from that side of ourselves.
We're told to be quiet. We're told to put our hand up. We're told to talk when Simon speaks or
Simon
says these games, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point.
You take note about how the different reactions, you know. You get some kids that want nothing to do with it. You get some kids that are all about it and are wanting to be the first to put their hand up and things like that. They're driven by their own ego. They're driven by their own emotions. Martial arts is the only thing that harnesses your ego and kills it.
Yes.
Like a bonsai tree, completely. You're cutting and growing yourself like the phoenix in Harry Potter, it dies and is reborn. That older part of yourself that is still questioning these changes, that is still unsure about whether things are in place or not, is because that better, newer version of yourself is thriving and being born through into this. The exposure to a situation, instead of looking at it as Ed taking time out in his fight camp, he's not taking time out in his fight camp. He's not at negative detriment by helping you with something. He is subconsciously helping himself by consciously in the moment helping you.
Yeah.
Because he would either do so or not. Because of what? Oh, I could help him, but I need to do some training myself. So I'll, or I could help him, but and again, tribe. Tribe's a very important word, extremely important word. When you think tribe, you think community. When you think tribe, you think third world. When you think tribe, you think hidden away in the world. Yeah. And they do a very good job at keeping themselves hidden. Well, from a first world's perspective, it's a negative connotation. When in fact, in all sense, it's been made to be negative. They're much more human than we are.
They're probably much happier than we are.
They're probably much happier. I
would put money on that, actually.
I'd put money on it.
There was I think it was David Cho went and lived for a brief period of time with the tribe in the Amazon, and he said to one of them, he said, "Oh, do you want to come back to America? Do you want to see what the great America's like?" And they said, "The place where people kill themselves." It was such a foreign concept to them.
No, the concept to have such detest to your own spirit and to your own primitive value and to your own ability to provide for yourself, to have detest as to who you are as a person, it makes no sense to them. It makes no sense to them. Of course it doesn't, because that's the complete inverse way of operating as a human.
Yeah.
So no wonder they like to keep themselves so hidden away, and no wonder there's small versions of them. There's recluse versions, just like our gym. We're a tribe. We could have the time there and then to better ourselves by also helping somebody else in the moment. But when would people do that out on the inside in their busy routine? Yeah. Sorry, could you help me with something on my phone quick? No, sorry, I ain't got the time.
I'm on my phone.
Could you hold the door open for me? Could you hold... I ain't got the time. Sorry, could you help me with... No, sorry. Could you help me with... Oh, I don't know, actually. I've got loads of these fucking autonomous things going on in my head. You're limiting yourself. You're preoccupied. And in being preoccupied, you're limiting yourself to your own values, your own beliefs, and your own potentials. Now, the wonderful thing, again, when coming into the gym is that you think, well, fight gym even, you're limiting yourself because of your own thoughts to the gym.
Yes.
But in letting go of those feelings, you're allowing the flooding of the primitive values to come back into play, which are also just in themselves out the gym, showing you how you act and how it has an effect on your being and your choices. And in doing so, you become much more inclined to be the person that you want to be and be ultimately the provider for yourself that you want to be.
I think it's a critical aspect of the human. I think we're so... The idea of bringing ourselves back into line with our primitive nature is suppressed totally in all forms of the modern day. It is not a good thing to be, for instance, aggressive. Now, the great misconception that I feel people have when it comes to martial arts is that it is aggression. I would argue, it's certainly it's channeled aggression, but it's
instrumental aggression.
Yeah. The way that I perceive this is that as humans, these are emotions that we have. These are things that we have to channel. We can't be absent of aggression. It's not possible for us. Even the most mild-tempered of people. I had read a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, which is essentially about the fact that people that keep their emotions away from people, they don't speak out when they're displeased, they don't actually voice their opinions, end up becoming spiteful. They end up saying things... being passive-aggressive because they haven't appropriately incorporated that part of themselves. A fight gym is the best way to channel that aggression. We are an aggressive being. It is part of our nature. To just assume that part of you can just die and be relinquished. You know how many people... The way that most people will channel that innate response to the world will be through arguing with someone. What good does that have? What is ever solved in a shouting match? Nothing. No one is ever happier as a result of screaming at each other. They might be appeased, but no one ever goes, do you know what? I'm really glad that I had a volatile argument with someone where I was shouting in their face and making myself look like an idiot because I couldn't control my temper. No one comes away from that feeling good.
Unless you're a sociopath.
Unless you're a sociopath, yeah.
But no, you're true. You're right in saying that in general, that it's not the way. It's not at all. And being out of line with themselves is definitely having a massive impact on that, a part to play for sure.
I think we're totally out of line with ourselves. I think most people are. We have to, by our nature, be away from our sort of primal, primitive self. We can't not be in. We're sitting in front of all of this technology in a warm, insulated room. There are too many things at play for us to be exactly toward our primitive self. But there are certainly parts of us that can be called back to that place. For instance, being able to take care of yourself, being able to feed yourself, being kind to the people around you, actually having that tribal mentality is a good thing. As you say, it's not. We consider tribes primitive, third world, behind the curve. We don't consider them as 50 people in a family
that have heightened ability,
that love
and
each
heightened
other.
awareness of sense within themselves, and that built-up resilient drive to know that you are the person that's going to better yourself at the end of the day. And if you ever don't believe it, then you're going to retract some kind of memory from a previous time where you were wishing on a better time.
Yeah.
And that'll be the reminder to you in that moment that you are part of something special, and that in sharing that craft and that gift with somebody, you believe it even more so. These positive vibrations and auras that are occurring and happening behind you and around you are also reinforcing that.
Yes.
Metronome. You could move 5 different metronomes off at different times, and eventually they'll all fall in sync with one another. It's that profound effect of you hang around me and you come to my gym, you'll see growth in yourself in ways that you saw in myself but you couldn't quite definitively describe unless you exposed yourself to it. And by exposing yourself to it, you give yourself infinitely more data as to, instead of me describing how that's made me feel. It's all good and well hearing how it's made me feel, but how does that make you feel? How does that actually impact you as a person? It's only going to do as much as it can by listening, by formulating thoughts, and by putting thoughts into actions. Well, if those formulating of thoughts and thoughts being put into actions are already being made worse by the way that the society operates and by the way that people on average operate, then you can imagine already that you're against the grain by trying to listen to somebody and then take that on and do it yourself. Because not only is it's not your program, as we mentioned earlier, you're living a different program. You're living your own program. But what happens in your programs as a result of your actions and your words? The potential's already existing. It's already there. It's just until you tap into it that it suddenly becomes, oh, hang on, this was never here. It was always there. It was always there. It had to always be there for you at any point in your life to be able to tap into it. Otherwise, how would you know when to tap into it? Well, if you knew when you were going to tap into your full potential, life wouldn't be so amazing.
No, that's it.
You'd just wait for that moment, wouldn't you? People waiting for every moment in life. They're always waiting. We're waiting for the day to end. We're waiting for a shift to end. We're waiting for a bus to come. We're waiting for a train to come. We're waiting for our meal to be cooked. We're waiting for the training session to begin. But when we're in a setting where we're operating in a tribe and we're operating under that condition, we're not thinking about time. We're not waiting for something. The only thing we're waiting for subconsciously is to grow and progress. But that's not fixated on in the short term, so much to take value away from what we're actually doing in the moment. So much so that in doing so, you could be so deep into a session, focusing only on yourself, that without knowing it, you've already helped other people in there. By talking to them, by showing them something, by having that confidence in you to go, do you know what, I can do that myself. I've been introduced into a group of people and a way of being, so much so that it's now rubbed off on me, and now I'm able to do that. We're not all in here to pyramid scheme and then become motivating people to pass that on to, right? No, that's not the way.
But it just happens.
It just happens. And it's not forced.
It's
right. Natural.
That's right.
The martial art aspect and the relationship that we have with it is natural. Some examples have been forced. We've been forced to have to use our martial art value and our skill for something. But if we are forced to use it, then it's because we've either had to run a mile to avoid a fight and then have to not back down an inch when it's brought upon us. But that whole element of control, you have control. You can decide, and you have the fitness as well to run away for a certain amount of time before you then decide whether you want to involve yourself or not. Albeit in the meantime, that person chasing you is not thinking as acutely as you are, and is just maintaining that aggressive thought, which is draining their energy.
Yes.
They're
not controlled.
They're not in control. And although people from the outside can appear to be in control, and as much as one can believe that another is in control before they got into a Muay Thai and whatnot, it's only until they got into the Muay Thai that one can also open up on their own inability to be in control of something.
You don't know until you're there.
And then, to be honest with yourself about something you didn't have control of, suddenly becomes a bit of a craving feeling.
Yeah.
You're actually letting go of it, and you're unburdening yourself with this invisible shackle that you held on yourself for whatever reason.
And you do feel that way. You do feel like there's something. It's sort of the process of becoming weaker in an effort to be stronger. You know, that feeling. I do. You nailed it there. I enjoy that feeling of thinking, I'm not so good at jiu-jitsu. I'm not so good at Muay Thai. But all the time I'm coming here, I'm gonna get better. And all the time that I'm coming here, I'm exposing myself. All
the time you're exposing yourself, you're giving yourself more data.
Yeah.
You're making mistakes more often.
Yeah.
You're working out how to better that position. You might have been put into a certain position, but now you know how to stop that from happening. And then you stop that from happening, and then you have more control yourself. And that's just one definitive way, word by word, of putting it. But what you are saying is that it's an infinite from that point forward. You're in the moment, and you get more used to your heart rate going a bit more, your core temperature being up a bit, you being in a tighter area that's confined, that sometimes you can't just get out of. That reminds me a little bit of the Tube in London. You're confined, you're in a space that you can't get out of, you've just got to deal with it, right? As opposed to being on a bus with no passengers. There's people like that in life. They have all of that natural space to roam in, and they're still moaning about things, whereas you could be packed in a tube living a really tight, bustled life, but you'd be just as comfortable. But you wouldn't feel comfortable if you weren't as densely occupied.
That's right.
So you wouldn't know that until you're in a clinched environment. You wouldn't know that until you've got knees and stuff being thrown at you, and that ability to now, okay, someone's a metre away from me and they're shouting at me. My inner water sphere isn't responding to that now. Your inner water sphere isn't responding to that now. You're understanding why they're angry, as opposed to just trying to repel their anger with your own anger.
Yeah.
So the martial arts, the food, the discipline, the deciding, the providing, it makes you understand things a lot more. And then that has a positive leaching effect. Unlike the negative leaching effect of a phone. You're doing it more yourself. I'm going to wake up when my body clock tells me it's time to wake up. When I feel like I need to get up and go for a wee. As opposed to being alarm clock based.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to my body go when I'm hungry. Yeah, or when I'm needing something to drink, instead of me going, oh yeah, that's conglomerate base. Oh, that looks good. Oh yeah, I'll have that. Are you even thirsty? I don't know, but what I do know is I saw that brand and I make
And my brain said yes.
And your brain said yeah. Your subconsciousness that's driven by whatever it be. Yes.
I think the point to round out today's video here is there are two key factors in our everyday life that we are perennially told should not be implemented, should not be a part of the way that we are, and that's calling back to our primitive nature and comfort. We feel as though comfort is a good thing. We feel as though comfort is a place that we should be. And with that, we don't feel as though it is suitable for us to call back to it, what it is that we truly are at our core. I think people, we don't consider ourselves the same as our spear-wielding, hide-wearing hunter-gatherer selves. We constitute ourselves as two different things. We're not. We are the same thing. Of course, there's been a great deal of progression, but we are the same creature. And on that basis, our neural pathways are the same way. Our way of being is the same way. Our priorities are the same way. I think an interesting point as well on that topic there is the feedback that you get from failure, from trial and error, and from exposure, from putting yourself out of that comfort zone is critical to a better way of living.
Of course.
You can't, if you don't move, there's a simple way of putting this that I really enjoy actually. If nothing changes, nothing changes. if you don't put yourself into a position where you can confront the weaker parts of yourself and be okay with that as well. I think that's an important thing. Of weakness is only weak so long as you don't choose to address it. If you are someone who doesn't know how to take care of yourself, if you're someone who doesn't know how to manage a stressful situation, if you're someone that struggles with abstinence, or with, as you say there, just assuming that because your body tells you, or because your mind tells you that something is the case, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is the case. A fantastic point that you touched on there was the fact that if we were to live our lives with an incorporation of our primitive self, and with that, just listening to us, listening to our body, as you say, wake up when you wake up, eat when you're hungry, drink when you're thirsty. We are programmed in a way to survive, and yet we don't trust our own body.
We're giving that control and trust
to someone else.
Someone else, in thinking that
who's
they
interested
have
in making a few billion off of it.
There we go.
Trillion.
Whether that's the doctor getting a bonus because of how many shots he gave out that month, whether it's the government getting more money in their pocket because of how tightly they squeeze the rest of society, with whatever it be, you're giving more control to somebody who doesn't deserve it, somebody who doesn't know how to use it, does not have your first intentions in their mind, and is not restocking that lake full of fish I discussed earlier.
Yes.
They're just draining out of it and expecting us to eat less and less as a result and still be happy with it. Yeah, but we keep that in ourselves, and as you said, we're told it's a bad thing to be in touch with our primitive self. The D-pulse assessment we touched on earlier, it reads the last 24 hours of your data in your body to tell you what time biologically is best for you to wake up based on your natural energy levels. So there'll be instances in life where I've had just as much sleep as I did the night before, but if I got up at a certain time different, I wouldn't be as awake. My body wouldn't be as biologically engineered to be up at that time. Could have had 3 hours sleep, but if I'm up at the right time, I'm good. I'm ready. My body and everything in the background that happens thousands and thousands of times a second, it's happened already. And I mean, it's best instance too. If a country had 1 billion people and they all operated together at the right time, how impacting and how resourceful could that country be? As opposed to every individual member of that country having their own interests in mind and they're all fighting against one another. How efficient is that country going to be? We'll take that contextually with someone in themselves, aware of who their self is, aware of how to act as a whole and see the bigger picture as opposed to not. And then before even touching into different principles of where you are in the world, you can already understand where I'm going with that, with how that then sets a nature on life.
Yes.
What do Western people hold more in value and mind than Eastern people? It's materialistic items, money, control, greed, dominance, happiness, control, love, spirit. Very much so.
Idris Franklin.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
You are a perennial advocate of the best parts of human nature. You are someone who I find enthralling in your conversation and inspiring in your way of being.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on to the show.
Bless you. Thank you so much.
And I will see you when I see you, sir.